Rolling. Julian, do I have your permission to record this Skype interview?
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Certainly.
Also, do I have your consent to upload this interview onto a website? The website will have a password and will be viewable by my graduate studies associates and other interviewees.
Sure.
Great.
That's a good idea.
So, my project is at Northern Arizona University. It's a Master of Arts majoring in rhetorical writing and digital media.
Cool.
So it's my final project. I chose an interdisciplinary focus, the study of the documentary Cowspiracy, its effectiveness as a model for behavior change toward environmental sustainability, and as a media literacy tool in general. So the first question was, please tell me about yourself.
Yeah, that's a nice wide open question too, isn't it? Okay, well, let me tell you a couple of things about myself in general, a couple of things specific to this topic. General is probably that my name is Julian Wilmington. Julian's a very English name, and both my parents are from England, although my mother was born in New Zealand. My father was born in London, but he went to New Zealand with his family when he was 6 years old. So I was born and bred in New Zealand, in the city, the capital city, Wellington. And so I went to university there and studied politics and English literature, which kind of informed my way of looking at the world, I think.
What kind of literature?
English literature.
Oh, English lit, yeah.
But yeah, I studied, my supervisor, or senior teacher for politics, was an old friend of the ex-Prime Minister, the previous Prime Minister. We don't have a president in New Zealand, just Prime Ministers. Anyway, when I was at primary school, elementary school, you might say, I often went to family friends' places, a place owned by family friends in the countryside. They owned a big sheep station, and meaning sheep farm. So it's like a huge big farm is the station. Hills and lots of sheep, horses, pigs, chickens and bantams that ride on your shoulder. You can feed them and follow you around.
Bantams are like hawks, kind of?
No, there's a bantam hawk, but these are like small chickens.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, chickens, but extra cute. And I also had a friend from primary school who owned small farms outside the city, and they owned quite a few sheep as well. It was a bit bigger than the hobby farm, but smaller than a big farm. Does that make sense?
Mm.
So I kind of grew up, even though I was very much a city boy and identify as a city boy, I grew up in going to farms quite often. And I had a friend actually at was a teacher's college who was a dairy farmer. So I've spent some time, not a lot of time, but I've visited dairy farms quite often too. So yeah, I've grown up a privileged lifestyle in both senses, being from the city, but having direct experience of country life in New Zealand too.
Hmm.
Don't know what else would be useful to say.
And where are you now? Let's tell our listeners.
Okay, yeah. So I trained as a teacher as well, including studying the Māori language. So I specialised in teaching in a second language because I didn't want to be a teacher in New Zealand not being able to speak the first language of Aotearoa.
You speak Maori. Oh, great.
I speak a bit of Māori. Ko he iti Punam. Even though I only speak a little bit, it's like greenstone or jade or like gold to me. It's precious. It's a beautiful language. It's a language of poetry and beautiful vowel sounds like a running river or babbling brook, but also of metaphor and poetry, which a lot of them metaphors remind me. A lot of the ways you can use nouns as verbs as well. You can play with language a lot, but you also have to think laterally, analogically. So it's a really interesting language.
Sounds like it. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Probably the only thing, I don't want to give my whole life story, but I don't know, maybe we'll come back to this later. But when I was first before teachers college, when I was at university, I roomed, you say in the States, I shared it in a house. I flatted with a friend. You say flatted, British English. and for 3 others of his friends. And so there were 5 of us. So we shared cooking and shopping as well. We grouped together money and went shopping in his car once a week and brought home the groceries and then divided who's going to cook what night. And after a week or 2, we realized, well, actually, we're all bum poor students. we could save a bit of money here somehow. And he says, well, what if we don't eat meat for the rest of the year? We looked at each other and went, oh, I've heard of people who do that. So I know it's possible, but what would it mean? This is like in about 1990, 91, 92, something like that. I was about 21. And so I think they're just inventing computers at the time. So, but I went to the library and looked up books on vegetarian eating, and I wasn't a vegetarian, but we were eating vegetarian. I knew that you had to make some sort of effort to figure out what you could eat to keep healthy. So I started reading these books just for the recipes, just for recipe ideas, because I enjoyed cooking. We enjoyed cooking, sharing ideas and recipes and good food, good conversation.
What were some of your favorite recipes that you guys made?
Well, I'd never had... my mum had done curry, but not very often, not very well. My mum's a terrible cook. and so these guys did curry really well. Some of them. I can't remember the others. It's 20 years ago now, right? But anyway, I guess stir-fried rice is still with fresh vegetables.
Yeah.
Still my regular. Did stuffed pancakes and stuff like that too. So there's always something interesting and different. Sometimes potatoes based, sometimes rice. Yeah. So
I love food.
Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, that's. So yeah, I'm saying I am vegetarian. Very much closer to being vegan in the last year or 2. But I sort of fell into the vegetarian diet, if not lifestyle, kind of sideways that long ago. Got used to enjoying cooking, learning. The other thing I was going to say about these books I found in the library is they often had pages next to the recipes. They had pages, more information about why it's good for the animals that you don't eat them, but also why it's good for the environment and good for your health.
So that information about the environment was salient to you back then?
Yeah, it was. Sure, I knew it was better for the land and the soil. What I didn't appreciate was how much methane the average cow produces. One single cow produces enough methane in a day, even an hour, for a decent bloody explosion. You can imagine all the cows in New Zealand, and there's a hell of a lot of cows in New Zealand. That's ridiculous. All that methane that they burp is going straight into the atmosphere. And it's just, we really are treating the sky like an open sewer. It's quite embarrassing being in New Zealand now.
Cows are wonderful, but there are not meant to be billions of them on the planet
that's
at
right.
once.
Beautiful animals.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
So now you're teaching in Korea.
Yeah. I'm teaching English at a university in South Korea where I've been for over 10 years now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and really enjoy it. Love teaching. I love living in Korea. And enjoy the challenge of learning both the language and the culture. It's a great job for a number of reasons. Students are good. Materials straightforward. Can get monotonous, but that's the challenge of being a teacher, is to not just teach at different levels, but also to enjoy teaching and keep yourself refreshed and challenged, and including different ideas and material.
For sure. But
also that leaves me a lot of time for reading. So reading, learning, watching videos, talking to other people. And so I've been doing a lot of that in the last few years too. The Wi-Fi, the internet in Korea is awesome. It's cheap and it's
best in the world.
Yeah, so I've learned a lot more. Since those days I had to go down to the library and look up for a single book and then take it home and read it to cook one meal, Now it's like putting all this information right here. It's amazing.
I remember doing my undergrad and the stress of writing a paper and running to 3 different libraries looking for the right book.
Yeah.
Now it's just all on my computer.
Exactly. It's only 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And, the first time we had to do a paper, it took me 2 days to type 2 pages. Back then, I thought, this is a sign. This is really useful information, not what I wrote, but just the process of going through typing, using a computer to type essays. So I enrolled myself in a night class and took a typing course. That was very helpful. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So,
it's like walking or breathing.
How do we do it? We have to write every essay by hand. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Only 20 years ago. Not long. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. I didn't know that you... was it a major or minor in Maori? A minor?
Yeah, you call it a minor.
That's interesting.
My major, I guess it was a 2-year postgraduate diploma. So I'd already had a degree, as with other people had already had degrees. At that time it was 2 years, now it's 1 year. But, and so I took an elective holiday or vacation course for 2 weeks at the end of the first year, where there were about 20 Māori people and 5 non-Māori who were wanted to improve their Māori language. And a couple of Māori in the course challenged us to really think about it more deeply. And I enjoyed the course and thinking about it so much. I thought, well, I don't want to go back to that teacher's college because they don't really take it seriously. I couldn't do more than that to improve my Māori. So I took a year off to study at a polytechnic, like a 2-year technical course. I took a course for a year, which was about 3/4 time.
What was that in?
In Māori language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I transferred to another teacher's college, which sort of in the heart of Māori culture, Māori. So there's a lot more Māori settlements around that area, so it's a bigger feature of that university, the culture of that area, that town and all. And so yeah, they did take it seriously, and I could join with other Māori and non-Māori who wanted to be teachers in Māori language, or of Māori language, so that I guess it was kind of a major for the second year.
In New Zealand, are there a lot of different indigenous languages, or is it mainly Maori?
Yeah, well, Māori, there are different Māori accents and different Māori words.
Okay,
and
but it's...
different Māori people. There's not one Māori nation, or like, I don't know, say North America, First Nations peoples. One Māori tribe, don't like that word, but family group, larger family group, if you like. The Māori word is iwi. Iwi means bones. People of the same bones, or the same blood, if you like. People of the same iwi, or hapu, or also waka, which means both, from when they came from the ancestral homelands, identify with that culture, like the culture of that dialect. They can pretty much all understand each other, but there are different pronunciations and dialect.
I know Canada, we have a lot of distinct native groups. I think maybe it would have been easier to preserve more native languages more easily if there had been... Well, Canada's quite big too.
Yeah.
So let's turn to the topic of cowspiracy.
Okay, cool.
What did you think of it? And maybe when was the first time that you saw it?
Oh, man. Sure remember that. Yeah, I don't remember. First time I saw it, I've seen it a few times since then. Different times and places. Goodness me.
It's okay.
I should have checked the questions beforehand, shouldn't I?
Well, that wasn't really in the questions, but...
good. That's why I don't remember it then.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't remember. It's sort of been out a couple of years too, hasn't it?
You must have been one of the first ones to see it, I think. Then.
Yeah.
Well, what did you think of it in general? How would you answer that?
Yeah. Well, I still think it's really good. I think it's really good for a number of different reasons. I don't usually get convinced about something for one particular reason. And this is a classic example. That's a case of different layers and levels and reasons for thinking something's good.
Okay.
So, firstly, think the information is all solid. I was talking about this the other day, the factual basis, if you like, for the movie. Someone was critiquing it the other day. I was talking about critiques actually with a fellow vegan/vegetarian in New Zealand. I went to meet for the first time. Met him on Facebook and got to chatting. I was home for a while, so I went down to see him. Anyway, he's saying that he'd been talking about it with some other people, and I said, yeah, but look at the facts which they've updated. When Leonardo DiCaprio was looking at coming on as executive editor, he said, okay, but I want you to double check all the facts because it's got to be bulletproof before I put it on Netflix. So they went through and double checked all the facts. That was really the only thing they did. They updated the facts page. Anyway, I used to work for Guangzhou Institute of Science and Technology, which is a national university. Actually, it's the university in Korea which has the highest number of references, citations from other from other publications and other universities. It's actually in the top 5 in the world now.
Did you say Guangzhou?
Yeah, on the southwest coast, towards southwest.
Which university?
Guangzhou Institute of Science and Technology.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I have a friend in Guangzhou teaching. I think it's the Guangzhou University of Education she's at, though.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, so anyway, my point is that we aren't just teaching postgraduate students there, including academic writing skills. We're also doing reading, editing, and proofing their papers for publication. And so part of that was editing and proofing for the top publications in the world, scientific peer-edited journals. And those include, in particular, Science, a journal named Science, and another one called Nature. So those are the 2 top goals for a publication if you're a postgrad student wanting to get your career kick-started as a scientist of any sort. And by far the bulk of the references for the factual information on the Cowspiracy site come from those journals or other equally reputable sources like the IPCC.
What was the name of the journal?
One is called Science.
Mm-hmm.
The other is called Nature.
Okay. Science and Nature.
Yeah. And so, yeah, there are those. The factual basis is solid. Let's put that as number 1.
Well, I like they also have, I guess this is since it went on Netflix as well, they have a page for the facts that are completely laid out with links to all of the material, and then they also have like an ongoing dialogue with people who are trying to argue against it and ask specific questions why, the methane is interpreted this way. So it's like a live investigation into the facts.
Conversation.
Inquiry. Conversation.
Yeah, it's true. To follow on from that, my way of seeing it is it's like a polite version of Michael Moore. Michael Moore makes his movies kind of funny and entertaining by walking up to people and confronting them with a camera in the face sort of thing. And these guys are sitting down politely and quietly and just starting a nice conversation with the cameras on, of course.
Sure, but they let the people know why they're there before they arrive.
Yeah, they're not rushing into people are up to someone, not randomly, but then they're just asking very quiet questions. What about me? And what about, what's the worst? what is the greatest impact, environmentally in that? And it's just purely just drawing out people's natural reactions and responses. It's fascinating. And so I think they've struck gold in that way too. They've really made people who should damn well know turn around and look at themselves and just held up a mirror to them and saying, look, if this is your job to know this, why aren't you being more on the ball with it all? So yeah, that's fascinating. They've done well in that area too. They've got an amazing niche that Michael Moore never thought about. Yeah. Anyway, the third reason that I really like it is that the graphics they use.
You mean the infographics, the charting?
Yeah, the infographics, or whatever you want to call them.
I was thinking about that this morning.
They present statistics really well, the computer animations and all that sort of stuff. I think my favourite's the one with the water. He's talking at the start about the amount of water it takes to make one burger. And he says,
I've seen that That one has been made into a billboard in California since
That's great.
I've seen that. I really like the land use one. It's like, this is how much land it takes if you're a vegan, if you're a vegetarian, and a meat eater. It's like this big.
Yeah.
And, well, I think that, and then there's the water one where he's in the backyard watering something.
Exactly.
And then that's the one you're talking about, right?
Spreading out down the road.
They do it artistically, scientifically, and always on a human scale, something that people can relate to. Because some people don't relate to numbers as well as, they relate to your backyard or to like an actual burger or, imagining the land specifically. And another one was, when they're talking about, people argue, if we just eat grass-fed beef, it'll be fine. But then they show how much land they would need to feed Americans with grass-fed beef, and it pretty much takes up all of Canada and Mexico and spills.
Right.
Yeah.
So they do a great job of myth busting and false, what do you call it, confidence bubble bursting or something like that. And I think the fourth thing, which I think they do extremely well, is after all that, after presenting all the facts, they have, I should remember his name, the farmer guy, right at the end.
The rancher?
Yeah, the great rancher guy. He's been in all those other movies too. Saying, if it's a direct challenge. You can't be an environmentalist if you eat meat and dairy.
Right.
You can feed your habit. You can be an addict. Don't make excuses. But if that's what you want to do, do it. But don't call yourself an environmentalist.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I've gone on the 350 page and wrote that down. Got some pretty heated responses.
You did?
Yes.
Good on you. Well done. I think it's a point that needs to be brought up.
Well, I joined that because I'm from the part of Canada that is developing fossil fuels, and I have extended family who make their living off of it.
Right.
But I disagree with, that's part of the reason I don't want to live there, is I don't want to contribute to that.
Right.
And then watching Cowspiracy, I realized, wow, it's not, fossil fuels is significant, but it's not the thing that we can change on a daily basis, like 3 times a day,
right.
as an individual. So it's...
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
So I think those are the 4 main areas that make me really impressed and really see the value in the movie. So I'll promote it and share it and encourage people to watch it and as much as I can. Yeah.
As you have been doing, and that's... Yeah. I appreciate your efforts. If you hadn't been doing that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about this right now.
Okay. Well, gosh, that's cool.
Yeah,
right.
It is. Number 3 was, did Cowspiracy influence your attitudes, behaviors, habits? I guess you were vegetarian before you started, before you saw it. So in terms of eating, research habits, anything like that?
Research habits, that's an interesting one. I've always been interested in reading, following news and current events, and so I guess I've just read more about that kind of thing online. It's made me more aware, I suppose you could say it's made me more aware of the more recent development of YouTube channels in 2 ways. But one is the general YouTube channel. I don't know what you call those kind of YouTube channels where people just document their own daily life. And was it Fun for Louie and another guy? I've never heard of them before until I heard that they'd gone vegan, because that seems Cowspiracy. They've gone vegan overnight or something, to a certain extent. Maybe not fully vegan, but certainly vegetarian anyway. And they're experimenting with the idea seriously for the first time, let's say that. And then the other thing on YouTube for people's personal channels is the vegan/vegetarian movement. And they are calling it a movement. A lot of them are interviewing each other. There's also daily lives. Like, this is what I'm eating today. This is me explaining why I eat this way now, or what I've learned in the last year or 2. But then they might meet up. Like the classic example, I think, was London. It was a London Veggie Fest. And cheap, lazy vegan. Have you heard of her?
No.
Okay, she's Korean born, American born Korean family. Grew up in the States, currently living and studying in London. And so she started up her own channel, excuse me. Excuse me. And so, yeah, she talks a lot about what she's cooking, but also why. And she's met up with a lot of other London-based vegan scene. And then there's Emily from Bite Size Vegan.
Oh, yeah. She's very well researched.
Oh, she's amazing. She's awesome, man. So impressive. And then Vegan Gains, and then
also well researched and very aggressive.
Yeah, oh yeah. But there's a real place for that. There's a big place. And then Dr. Greger from nutritionfacts.org.
Oh yeah, there's a few doctors out there who are making their presence on the media. You know.
Yeah, which is so important. It's been so lacking.
Yeah, I think without the media, I don't know how anyone would have been able to learn about any of these facts, really.
Yeah.
It was the media that got the director to even know about this in the first place because, well, first of all, Inconvenient Truth was the movie that he watched that made him want to be an environmentalist because he loved nature and thought, wait a minute. At the beginning of the movie, Kip Anderson said that his first trigger was Inconvenient Truth by Al Gore, but it didn't talk about the impacts of animal agriculture. And then he said his friend sent him a link, so it must have been on social media, about United Nations report showing the effects of animal agriculture after doing studies on it.
Yeah,
so really...
I think it says at the beginning it's an email. He said one single email one day his friend sent him. And I think the email had a link to maybe, might have been the study by Goodland and Anning from 2009, which is the 51% statistic that they quote. You know about that? Remember that part?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
51% of greenhouse gases, right?
Yeah, and so that's often the point that's attacked by people who want to critique the movie as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got to say, I'm happy to talk about that.
Well, let's get into that because I would like to be able to... I think it depends on how it's calculated. I think some of the numbers calculate just the cattle themselves as they exist in their bodies and their contribution. Some of the numbers also include the transportation of moving them around and like manufacturing them, and went from more like closer to the point where they get on someone's plate, because that is definitely part of it, right? But so what do you know about those numbers that you think is significant?
A couple of things. Okay, so their phrasing, if I can remember their phrasing accurately, they basically say the full livestock chain process. That's not right. the full process, livestock process. So it's like you're saying, it incorporates the whole thing. It's not just the amount of methane burped by one cow, but it's not just all cows and the methane they burp, but it's the amount of carbon and methane produced by growing the feed to give to the cows, transporting the feed to the cows, transporting the cows to the factory to be processed or killed, slaughtered, transporting the meat to the supermarket or your local butcher or store. It's also chopping down the trees to grow the feed to give to the cows.
Does that include the rainforest? Because that's
the last thing I was just going to say. It also includes chopping down the trees, rainforest or otherwise, to make pasture, if it's pasture based, if the cows have been grown there. But I think mostly in the States anyway, they chop down Amazon to grow maize and soy to
feed
transport to the cows back in the States.
And that's remarkable, and I think that people don't know that is just, it's blasphemous that the Americans are I don't want to say the Americans, but to feed American hunger for this kind of food, they're going down into the biggest rainforest on the planet that doesn't belong to their own country, and through business, decimating it. And at, what was it, like 1 football field per
second or something crazy, yeah. Let me add to that, because I'm from New Zealand, but it's equally as insane and evil, frankly, I think, in New Zealand, because we've got a culture, a history of letting our dairy farms, in particular dairy and sheep, destroy not just the local land of New Zealand, but also Pacific Islands nearby. I'll explain that.
Sorry, what nearby?
Pacific Islands.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes.
Nauru? I should know, sorry, I should research it properly. No. Near Tahiti. There's one particular island that had a lot of phosphorus on it. A lot of one particular chemical, which is a good ingredient in fertilizer. Basically the whole island was covered in that. I think from seabirds. A lot of seabirds had deposited guano on that, and it had built up over time. And not the whole island. Some of the island was used for holiday resorts. It was a famous holiday resort for a long time, mostly because a lot of wealthy people had gone there to help maintain this industry of the factories and exporting for other farms around the world, but particularly in New Zealand. New Zealand companies invested heavily in that for the sake of farms in New Zealand. But eventually it was all gone, and that was after they moved all the locals off that island. So basically destroyed the economy for local people, destroyed their homeland, and now just destroyed the whole thing. There's basically nothing there now, because they've transported all the rest of it to New Zealand mostly. So that was the first place they've destroyed. Now with a huge development of dairy industry in New Zealand, it's gone from sheep to cows in the last 10, 15 years. Now the dairy industry has started feeding cows and bulls in New Zealand for beef palm kernel. Now, if you know about the palm industry, you know that locally to New Zealand, Indonesia, Malaysia, especially the rainforests around there, are really good for growing palm trees. So if you ever go to visit those countries, beautiful, beautiful places. What used to be beautiful rainforest, Pacific rainforest, is now basically not all, but
you mean
equally quickly it's been
Indonesia?
chopped down to grow more palm tree plantations, monoculture. So you get rows and rows of these identical palm trees, and the orangutans are the most identifiable, and the cutest, easiest to spot. But all these other amazing species are in danger of going extinct if they haven't already. So
it's really terrible. And
yeah,
palm can be harvested in a sustainable way. I think some companies, I was watching one vegan channel, they're talking about Ben & Jerry's came out with a new vegan line.
yeah.
4 kinds of ice cream that are made from almond milk. And one of the vegan, Happy Healthy Vegan, they were showcasing it. And they got criticized by other vegans because they're like, there's palm oil in that. But they said that this company did do research and they were spending more money to cultivate sustainable palm oil. So I don't know the ins and outs of how it's done, but it can be done. It's just that companies, profit being the ultimate goal, they have to consider environmental impact and also impact on human, like homes and animals' homes as well.
Right.
Oh yeah, one of my friends who just moved back to Korea, she was living in Singapore, and the pollution from Indonesia and Malaysia was blowing all into nearby countries, the burning down of those forests. was blackening the air in nearby countries.
Yeah. Yeah, they clear the land by burning.
Mm-hmm.
Season, well, once a year, in that season when they clear the land, yeah.
I think if people start recognizing the biggest cause of environmental destruction, which is, the animal agriculture industry, we can start refining our processes in other ways as well. I think if we have a job to do, if we're doing something academically or in any kind of work, we make a list of priorities to manage our time. What is the most important thing to do right now? And this is the most important thing to be working on.
Yep,
there are many other things that we need to attend to, but once we can take care of this, and also in taking care of it, I think we'll be raising the awareness of general population that A, these problems exist, and B, that they can be tackled in a way that they can even be a part of. And then I think also lobbying is something that will have to happen.
That would be lovely if we could get lobbyists who didn't just represent the oil and dairy industries, but could lobby for a good instead of selfishness.
I don't know. I sent you. I don't know if you had a chance to look at the Chatham House study, and it's the 12-country study done by the British think tank, and they talk about the agriculture industry being the biggest source of environmental degradation. It's not a question at all.
Right.
Like when I was presenting this in my class, I did have some people say, well, you might have to show that it's true. There's no really, it's just so solid. If you look into the science, there's so much out there. But the key point is how to close the information gap and how to adapt behavior. So I think since I became vegan because of media, almost everyone I know who has changed their habits did it because of other people's individual social media and sort of the community that's been developing. But perhaps to do it on like a grand enough scale, some petitions would have to be drawn, some letters will have to be written. If enough people point attention to a certain issue in the government, I'd like to think that we could inspire change. So that's something that I'll be looking at after this project. I mean, I don't want to do anything that gets me arrested, but although some people who do make an impact do get arrested.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right?
It's effective too. It's a really important part of getting the message out there often. And, I don't know if Jesus was arrested, but, he took whips to the money lenders in the church, didn't he? So,
who?
Jesus.
Well, he was, I don't know all of the history very well, but he definitely took some flack for issues, right?
Well, yeah. I don't know. I'm from a churchy background too, actually. I didn't mention that before, but I've got family history in the church, and I was actually a youth pastor for a year when I was 21, before I went home to live with my friends. And I haven't been to church for a long time. I'm not a very Christian recently. I should have been going to church. But my point is that it really pisses me off that the church is, I don't know, just doesn't see this as an issue. Talk about ethics and talk about caring. And there are Christian vegan movements now and environmental movements that acknowledge this as an issue, but it's such it's a minor thing. But what I'm saying is I really see it as a new wave of ethical awareness. Just like slavery and LGBT rights. And,
sure, in Canada, in Ontario, in the province of Ontario, it's the biggest, province in Canada. Activists, by petitioning and lobbying the government, have gotten veganism recognized as a group, just like any other, like as a belief, or
cool.
I don't know how they define it exactly, as a right to be protected. So I think one step leads to another step, and it makes it easier for other countries to also, once the precedence is set. I'll send you the link later at some time, but vegans have been officially recognized in one part of Canada, more liberal part. You've already talked about number 4, but I'd like to just speak it out. How can Cowspiracy best be used as an educational tool inside or outside the classroom?
Wow.
And I would say you've already done a great job because you were part of hosting a film festival involving Cowspiracy, which is where I saw the movie the first time.
Cool.
Yeah. Just wondered if you had any other thoughts on that question.
Yeah, well, schools are great centers for learning, even continuing education. Lots of ideas in those ones, actually. So first of all, let's have lesson plans based on studying the movie for a week or two. Let's have January based on vegetarian eating. Let's show it there if it's in class time for elementary, primary school or something. Or any other month that's more appropriate to the school system.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get the kids, the new generation, aware of all the details and information, the facts, for God's sake. And then let's also have after-school programs for adults to learn cooking, but also watch the movie and analyse it, do their own research, whatever they want to do, and then share cooking and that kind of thing. You could have language classes based on it,
Yeah.
And there are all sorts of new vocabulary even for native speakers of English, like externalities, the price of pollution being put onto the consumer. Like price of a burger. You pay a fraction. The customer who buys the actual burger and eats it only pays a fraction, and everybody else pays the rest because of subsidies for dairy, livestock industry farmers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was in Meatonomics by the lawyer who wrote that. Yeah.
Right. I think it's mentioned in Cowspiracy too, briefly. They don't dwell on it, but they certainly go over it.
Right, in Cowspiracy, he's the speaker who mentions it.
Oh, okay. All right.
I've been looking at his book a little bit and blown away by that. Basically, it's secondhand smoke. People don't want to hear this, but the truth is, people eating meat is the same as smoking in that it's harming people around them.
Yeah.
And how to get that information out there and make it legislative, I suppose, on some level, where people have to take responsibility.
Right.
I mean, we can't attack people who don't even realize it. First, people have to be educated and given a chance to make changes. But I think that there should be some consequences.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
People should take responsibility for their behaviors. That's my opinion.
Every sector of society needs to see this, needs to know this information.
Mm-hmm.
It's having an impact on everyone in different ways, whether you eat meat or not. Obviously, of course, because if you eat meat so much, but
well, and there's also
flow-on effects on the environment. That's putting up the costs of insurance
and healthcare.
Yep,
if we factored in the cost of how much money is spent on people in hospitals, because most of the people who are in hospitals in America are there for preventable diseases.
Right.
The top killers in America are all preventable. Most of them are preventable diseases: heart disease, diabetes, cancer.
Comes from diet. Yeah, exactly.
Is primarily diet related. So if we factored in that cost as well, I mean, nobody wants to be in that situation. But it's just an information gap issue. I say it's a huge issue, and it's an information gap issue.
Right. Going back to words or individual words that are kind of key in a sense, probably addiction. But
well, it is an addiction. I was thinking about that today.
Absolutely.
How I was sitting in a restaurant, and I realized that my eating habits that I've come to are high fruit, high grains, high carbohydrates. And when I was a kid, that was the kind of food that I really enjoyed. And I think it was just through living in a family where meat was on the table every dinner meal at least, lunch and dinner, it sort of becomes introduced to our palate, and then it does become like an addiction. It's not something that we really require. Well, definitely, it's actually harmful to us.
Sure.
But, I mean, people smoke and do other things or have other habits that no one can argue there's anything good about them, but they just do it and they're addicted.
Yep. Another key word here is disinformation. Just tonight I was having dinner with a friend, a colleague, I met this last year, and he introduced me to another friend of his who's a local Korean, lives in the town here. He's actually a professor of horticulture at the university next door. And they wanted to have some Korean barbecue. So they went and got that, and I had some Korean traditional hot pot soup, vegetable based. He said, "Oh, are you vegetarian?" I said, yeah, I'm vegetarian. And he said, "Oh, I couldn't do that. I need my protein." The protein argument again. Yeah, my mother was saying that you've got to have a balanced diet and 3 square meals a day and all this. But my mother now takes pills for cholesterol and has type 2 diabetes.
Sure.
So clearly her balanced diet and 3 square meals a day or whatever is bullshit, basically. That's what she was taught to say.
In the China study, they cover that it was basically a propaganda campaign in the early part of the 20th century. Yeah.
Marketing and propaganda.
There's no cholesterol in the plant kingdom, so people go onto a 100% plant-based diet. There's natural cholesterol in our body that our body produces, but basically vegans have a 0 cholesterol intake.
Right.
Yeah, and cholesterol causes, it's the stuff that sticks in people's arteries and clogs up their hearts. And
just to finish off that mini story about my mother. My mother's one of 4 children. She has 2 brothers and a sister. The sister's the youngest. The sister and her husband, my aunt's husband used to be a bodybuilder and is still pretty fit and healthy. And they eat meat, but minimal. And they're both really strict about keeping really fit, going to the gym every day and all that. But my other 2 uncles, my mother's 2 brothers, have both had major operations to deal with cholesterol as well. One's had a couple of stents put in his heart, a couple of aneurysms, is what you call it. And the other one's had veins taken out of his legs to put elsewhere to replace them because they've been clogged up from meat product and meat protein, cholesterol. So disinformation, man.
Disinformation, indeed.
The myth of protein. And protein, all that.
Yeah, actually, it's better for us to eat less protein because protein is like alcohol in our liver. It's something our body doesn't want to have too much of.
Right.
Because it takes a lot of energy to digest. But
it's really good.
Maybe I'll have to do another nutrition-based inquiry at a different project.
I was just going to say, there's a really excellent clip from Dr. Greger from nutritionfacts.org saying that protein is not what most people need, whether they're vegan or omnivore. Fiber is what we need.
Exactly.
Soluble fiber, plant-based fiber.
Yeah, I've heard that. Instead of people saying, "Did you get your protein?" they should be saying, "Did you get your fiber today?" Fiber is what we really want.
Your bananas and your kimchi. Whatever.
Well, kimchi puts good gut bacteria back into our bodies. Yeah. I think, though, that, yes, my topic is definitely environmental, but it's very interesting how it's also so important that we become media literate and to spread media literacy in schools. Media literacy is basically teaching people to debunk information, like to question and look behind who's creating something and ask critical questions and check out facts. And one of the biggest ways to teach it, usually in a media literacy class, they recommend, according to the American Media Literacy Education Association, their website, they say 30% of the class should be making literacy, making media. And I think it's just because it makes it fun, it gives self-efficacy, a personal voice. It teaches people, students, everyone, that there's someone behind the camera, there's someone behind the computer constructing that image, because they're like, wait, I could be making this. Who is this person?
Very cool.
And it engages them, it makes them active and creative. So I'm really interested in both of these topics. I think they go together, they dovetail really nicely, and this movie is just such a great example of great skills with media and someone who's keenly interested in a topic, and maybe they're not going to change the world with one film, but they're certainly making a very big impact
So,
for two people to decide to go and do this project. So if they can do that, what can we all do?
absolutely. It's awesome.
And
I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah. My undergrad degree was in English literature and politics. My postgraduate degree, not teaching, not my teaching diploma, but my other one, my MA, was in English literature and media studies. And so, yeah, having just talked about disinformation, that's exactly what I'm saying. Having an awareness of what disinformation is out there and learning to analyze where messages come from, research so that you can find who sourced the information, who created the information, who created the studies, how many times it's been cited, reviewed, critiqued by other people who are professional and have independent kind of funding, and don't have a vested interest and can be paid by industry to produce a study.
Absolutely.
It's like they're all really important key questions, and it should be actually really easy to find the answers. And if you know where to look and how to find the answers, then it becomes easier. But until people start, following those questions through, then we can all be victims. I've fallen for people's stories and spent money where it wasn't worthwhile in the past. Yeah, even as a teacher. So, yeah.
Mistakes are great learning tools, so I make lots of them.
The more the merrier.
Well, Julian, I think I got a lot of good gold nuggets from you today. Thank you for taking the time to spend talking with me.
My pleasure. It's been good.
I know that some of the other people I interviewed were talking about putting together another little film, maybe not doing a full-on festival the way you have been doing every year, but just an event this summer.
I hope so.
So I'm going to look
at... happy to help fund it if necessary, more helpful.
Maybe getting information about location and stuff. I had wanted to do it within the time of this project, but I didn't realize how intense I have to invest my time in this project. But I think the summer would be a nice time anyways, and maybe some of the participants from this study who are interested, we can get together and have another chat.
So,
yeah.
Can I tell you one other thing?
Absolutely.
I forgot to mention earlier. Asking about the 51% statistic in Cowspiracy they mentioned at the beginning, and how that comes from the full cycle, the full process of the livestock industry, something like that. Firstly, that study was produced by two gentlemen by the name of Robert Goodland and Jeff Anning. Robert Goodland I met in Korea in 2012, I think. He came to do a talk at an environmental conference in Gwangju. Gwangju was hosting an international cities, environment, and maybe even climate change conference in 2012. And I was a reporter, an editor or something for local English language community magazine, monthly magazine there. So I went along because I'm interested in environmental issues anyway, and saw that there was a smaller talk, a set of 3 talks, I think, about vegan, vegetarian issues and how they impact the environment. So I thought, that's cool, I'll go along. I was really busy, I had something else on earlier, so I turned up just for the end of his talk. But I videoed the last minute or two of it, and I've been kicking myself the rest of my life since then, because it's brilliant. And it turns out he was actually married to a Korean. He died a couple of years later, a couple of years before now, 2014 or something. His wife's Korean, so he knows a lot about Korean culture, and he was talking about the Korean traditional diet being basically by default vegan or certainly vegetarian.
Will Tuttle talks about that in his book.
Right.
Yeah.
No, well, he may well have got that from
Probably.
equivalent.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
But secondly, to that story, when he died, I was shocked when I found out about it. A few months later, I completely missed it in the media. But I contacted his partner, Jeff Anning, whom I'd never contacted before, been in touch with or anything, just to say, man, I'm sorry, I only met him briefly after the talk. I was glad to have met him and found out about your work and your study. This is before Cowspiracy came out.
Yeah.
Well, when I met Bob Goodwin's from Cowspiracy came out. I think it was before. I contacted Jeff Anning. It was before Cowspiracy too, just the first time. Anyway, Jeff. I got in touch with Jeff too, and he's a very approachable guy, and he's continuing doing good work with a website and a Facebook page called Chomping Climate Change.
Chomping? Like
Chomping Climate Change.
Like chomping, like chewing on?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're promoting the whole thing about how by cutting down on meat and dairy, by eating plant-based foods, then we can reduce our impact on the climate. So we're eating the bad effects of climate change.
A good metaphor.
Something like that, yeah. And it's actually focused on, it's targeted at students, especially kids. But it's not exclusive. He publishes a lot of latest studies, but also articles from media, all sorts of things, especially on Facebook page. So I recommend that.
I'll check it out.
To anyone as a good resource. He actually had some words of criticism about Cowspiracy. They were invited to be interviewed on it, but he at that stage was uncomfortable with the way they treated some facts. The main one I remember, he gave me a list. He actually sent me an email outlining some of the things he was uncomfortable with. The main one I remember is that the difference between cows burping and farting methane. He said that they describe cows as farting methane, but actually it's burps. I see that as a minor technical thing. I think they, unfortunately, he missed a golden opportunity to get his message out much further if he had been on Cowspiracy. He could have clarified that or
well, it takes a certain kind of bravery to be videotaped in an interview, right?
Yeah, I think his expertise is in the mathematics and the research and study, writing, reports, that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe
another
he's camera shy. I don't know.
Key point that I want to emphasize in my project is this is an interdepartmental study. I think there are brilliant scientists and other departments who just need to strengthen their communication skills.
Right. Yeah.
They just need a platform to express their ideas. And I would love to see more universities have like a really good rhetorical writing, media literacy class in other departments that have really interesting information to air, and also to include more immersion style cross departmental classes, like an environmental class in an English department where people are taking information and writing really persuasive or critical papers about issues. I love literature and I love just sheer studying of rhetoric and also education, but I think making these connections could be really beneficial, like mutually beneficial to other departments as well as to communication departments, as well as to keep them current, Yeah. But we're just hitting about the hour mark, my friend.
Really?
Yeah.
Already? Oh, I was getting going.
I know. We might have to have a part 2 for you. Let me know if there's other things that you wanted to mention that I...
No, I'm glad to mention that. I could... Yeah. I wanted to say I'm really glad that producing a video is part of your course requirement there, and I think media literacy is, including producing content, is a modern skill. That's a modern literacy, really, isn't it? And so having these people who can go to all the other people who are more camera shy and inviting them to make a statement or even a critique and giving them avenues for feedback. I mean, Jeff Anning didn't choose this conspiracy as an avenue now, but he's got his own avenues.
Mm-hmm.
But the more people who are out producing content will, ask and will offer avenues to, clip time and all that.
For sure. I think it's like any skill, it just gets easier with practice. And
Right. And, hopefully, what I'm saying is hopefully we get more of the truth that's been hidden by the disinformation and marketing bullshit that's been supported by our governments, unfortunately. Recently, the last 10 to 50 years or whatever. It's just... Anyway, yeah, so it's really positive, of course, and I'm really glad of modern times. We are living in an exciting time. Michael Mann. You know Michael Mann? He's another example. He's the hockey stick scientist. He's the scientist from climate change who discovered that carbon emissions are not just going along steady, but have started going up, and then they're going to go up really quickly at the end. And he called it the hockey stick because it's a graph that goes long and then shoots up at the end. And when we hit the tipping point, that's when, instead of going down like a ball tipping off at the end of a table, methane and carbon footprint emissions are going to go up like that. That's when climate change is going to become probably runaway and catastrophic, like really damaging. And so, what I'm saying is he's really approachable too. He's a father and he's a nice guy, and he's been attacked mercilessly, in the media and by just vicious vitriolic hate mail, email.
Fear-based.
But he's still open to people chatting with him on Facebook.
Oh.
So, just like Jeff Anning is open and responds to emails and Facebook messages.
So you're recommending I check them out?
I'm recommending anyone who doesn't believe in conspiracy or stuff we're talking about makes their own direct approach to people who are experts and do know what they're talking about. Because that's what I've done. That's why I'm here now today with you.
Brings it to life.
Yeah.
And one of the things that came up in some of the interviews is, being sensitive to people and they don't want to be confronted, and I agree with it. But at the same time, there is a time limit on how long we can make a change before it's going to be too late.
Yeah.
So I feel a sense of urgency, and I'm trying to ameliorate it with kind of the soft skills we need to convince people. So I'm really curious how to hit that perfect spot in the middle where we can be convincing, but there's, a schedule. We can't just, as long as we get around to it the next 100 years. No.
Yeah.
It has to happen right now.
Actually, that reminds me of just very briefly. You're saying before about the power. We're both agreeing on the power of social media, but actually, I was thinking too that it's not just social media. Like you said, soft skills. It's a bit buzzword or a keyword. Social skills. Community. Keyword. Like the vegan scene in London and States and some places. It really seems to be an equally important thing, is what I'm saying. To have a local community or a local scene where you can go and share a vegan meal once a week, or around someone's home or different people's homes, rotational basis, or whatever you want to do, and share the cooking skills as much as just enjoying sharing the food. How many people have that? I hope a lot, but some people say that the modern era of communicating and connecting through internet is removed, and so it's not sharing the food necessarily. Hopefully it is. Hopefully we can connect with other people locally. Same thing, but I'm saying we need to keep those old traditional skills of actually sitting down, sharing a conversation, and cooking and sharing a meal and washing the dishes and all that.
Yeah, we need to reinvent them with plant-based meals.
Yeah,
exactly. And we have been. We've done it a little bit with the Bite Club and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
So let's put that on the agenda.
Absolutely.
Movie and more potlucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna wrap it up for now.
Okay. That's cool.
Because I have other homework to do before
Yeah,
I go to bed. But I'm gonna talk to you more about this later, Julian.
Oh yeah, anytime, please. Yeah, it's been great chatting. Yeah, well, important and fun too. It is fun sharing a meal, and it's fun thinking about the future, critiquing and analysing the past and all that. So yeah.
Basking in the radiant energy of other, positive-minded people is always great.
Yep.
Okay, so thank you, Julian, and we'll be in touch.
Good on your ear.
Thank you.
Good luck with it all. See you next time.